coverage of politics is often about the horse race, who's betting on which candidate and why. But once big election days like Super Tuesday are over, much of the national media move on, leaving behind voters with a lot left to say about the issues that are important to their lives. But a new collaborative radio project, America Amplified, asserts that conversation doesn't have to end there. John Dankosky, the project's engagement editor, joined me in the studio to discuss.
It's a project that I've been working on with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for some time. It really started with WNYC in New York and WAMU in Washington. They wanted to figure out a better way to cover the 2020 election than we did last time. I think we can all fairly say that the media didn't get a lot right in 2016. So they wanted to do that, and I think the focus really was, how do we hear from more people's voices and have less of the punditry, have less of the horse race? We're always going to cover those things in public radio and in any media, but we really wanted to hear more voters' voices. And so the project eventually got picked up by KCUR in Kansas City, a big national project, and they hired a central team, and they also started working with some of the collaboratives around the country. I had been heading up the New England News Collaborative for the last 3 years, and as I moved on to this project, I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to do talk shows around the region on a really important issue in a really important year.
Yeah. And so voters in Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine weighed in for this hour-long special that people can go online and listen to if they didn't get to catch it this morning. And you asked a few through-line questions, one of which we went out, Caroline McGrath and Dave Fraser, two of our team members, went out, and they asked them, what most concerns you about your community or the country in the coming year? And we heard from two Western Massachusetts voters, Leroy Moser in Springfield and Michael Costello of Agawam. Let's hear what they said.
Issues of economy are great concern, health care, international relations, you name it. You can go right down the line.
Fresh out of college, obviously, one of the biggest things is, student debt and education, as well as a future teacher, kind of where the education system's heading towards. I went to college to be a healthcare professional originally, so obviously healthcare is a very kind of controversial issue. What kind of policies are going to happen in the future?
So a younger gentleman and an older gentleman weighing in on two similar issues, the economy and healthcare. What did you hear from people in Vermont and Maine? Similar or different things?
Well, I think we heard the same thing. Look, the economy comes up almost every single time you ask voters what matters most to them. What I think is a little different this year is there's a lot of different aspects to what the economy is. Look, we're talking to people just a few days after the stock market had a big tumble. For some people, the stock market is the economy. For other people, young people who are trying to pay their college debts, what really matters is, can I afford health care? Can I afford to pay down those college debts? And we were hearing that fairly consistently across the region. I do want to, as we read and hear about these through-line questions we're asking, say it's really important that we have some of these basic questions that we're asking, because we're not just doing it here, we're doing it across the country. And the hope over the course of this year is this project will gather lots of voters, not only from New England, but all over the country, answering those questions, and we're going to see what we can learn from it and see what it means to talk about the economy, for instance, over the course of 2020.
Yeah, that is a really fascinating point. The economy, you hear it all the time, the economy, the economy, the economy, and it means so many different things depending on age, where you live, and kind of your age and stage in life. Another one of those through-line questions, John, that our team asked and your team is asking as well, what do you want people to understand about your community or your life? We heard from two more voters, Zeska Morris in Springfield and Eddie Valentino of West Springfield. Here's what they said.
Oh, absolutely. This is the reason why we come out to vote is, especially with the NFB, that's the National Federation for the Blind. They are a political group, and they go to Washington seminar to make sure that, to ensure, our futures. And so it's very important to me to let the community know that we are here and that we like to live our lives just like everyone else.
It's a lot of issues I know, but going on. But inequalities is one. Also, equal pay, and opportunity, so people will have the opportunity to better themselves.
Equality. We're hearing this word a lot in this voter cycle, and inequality as well. How did that shake out in terms of what you heard from voters who either called into the program or who you spoke with for this project so far?
Well, here's what's really interesting is we expected that income inequality would be one of the most important issues on people's minds for the big reason that both Elizabeth Warren, Massachusetts senator, who didn't do so well in the Super Tuesday primary, and Bernie Sanders, who did a little bit better, are both talking about that an awful lot. It's the core issue for a lot of voters. And as we went out across this entire region, I'll say, we probably heard people talking about that more than anything else. And it gets back to that question of what is the economy? For many of these voters, their personal economy, whether or not they had enough money this month, wasn't actually the issue. They were telling us they're concerned about people who didn't have enough, who didn't have as much as them. So we are hearing from suburban and rural voters concerned about what's happening in Springfield and Holyoke, and that to me is really interesting. I think another thing that you heard from that first voter is a lot of personal issues that have to do with very specific local things or things that are important to their lives. And one of the things we're trying to get to, honestly, in this project is to hear what really matters to people, not just what are national political pundits saying are the most important issues. No, if what's important in your life is getting some specific service or what's happening at your town budget or your school, then we want to hear about that because it may not play into the presidential race, but that's really important, and we need to figure out how to tell more stories about it.
People from the grassroots weighing in on these issues, really important. You mentioned Elizabeth Warren, which makes me think about a question about polling, because we know from the 2016 election, polls were wrong. They did not call that election correct. President Trump came out the victor there. We saw polls ahead of Super Tuesday saying, Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, they could be neck and neck. Sanders is up a little bit, but most likely Sanders wins, Warren takes second. That is not what we saw. We saw Joe Biden win. We saw Senator Sanders take second, and Elizabeth Warren come in third in her own state. Is it time to take a different look about how we in the media use polling or talk about polling in our reporting?
Yes, but I will say that we haven't caught up yet with all the different ways in which voting's happening right now. So, for instance, we're talking about polling that happened a week ago. But what are some things that happened since that week? Well, we had a couple of candidates.
Blew up.
Yeah, a couple of candidates dropped out and said they were going to throw their support behind Joe Biden. In Massachusetts, we have early voting now. Well, we have the ability for people to have voted for Pete Buttigieg, and then he drops out of the race. That vote is still cast. So that's part of the mix, too. How does that play into the polling? One of the polls that we talked about on our program actually had, and it came out, I think, at the very end of February, it had Bernie Sanders beating Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. It had Joe Biden in 5th place.
Wow.
Pretty far down, but a lot of national media attention. A lot of people deciding to vote on Super Tuesday means that maybe that doesn't mean as much. Also here, not every state has this, the fact that we've got a somewhat open primary system where the huge number of unaffiliated voters, the unenrolled, can show up and say, I want to vote Democrat this time. That matters a lot. And clearly Joe Biden was, on this Super Tuesday, a more popular candidate for more of those independent voters, but then also more people from the Democratic establishment as well.
Yeah, I think it'll also be very interesting to watch. This is the first time we've had early voting in Massachusetts. Whether or not ranked choice voting becomes of interest to more people, especially with so many people dropping out at the last minute, and now that vote essentially means nothing. With ranked choice voting, it might hold a little more weight.
Yeah, and I know Maine has gotten into ranked choice voting for other elections, not for this presidential primary, but they've been experimenting with this. A lot of people are calling for ranked choice voting to help solve some of those problems.
Something else we hear people talk about in the political arena, give people something to vote for, not necessarily something to vote against. What was your sense of that as you heard from voters across issues on this?
One of the things we heard, along with the economy, that people are most concerned about was, how do we get rid of some of the divisiveness in politics right now? How do we actually pull together and do something? We heard from one man who said, look, we're not going to get anything done if we keep beating each other up.